Tec Sounds presents EduTrends.
Welcome to the EduTrends podcast and videocast, brought to you by the Institute for the Future of Education of Tecnológico de Monterrey. I am your host, José Pepe Escamilla, IFE Associate Director. In this episode, I met with Ángel Cabrera, President of the Georgia Institute of Technology. We talk about how Georgia Tech adapted to the COVID-19 crisis. We discuss their new technology tools and projects regarding education and innovation. Also, Ángel told us what's next for Georgia Tech and the future of higher education. Enjoy. Hola, Ángel. Hi, Ángel. Welcome to this episode of EduTrends podcast and webcast produced by the Institute for the Future of Education of Tecnológico Monterrey. I'm delighted to have you here today and talking about what has happened during the last year and a half of the pandemic. Do you think that the changes that we have had during the last year and a half will last? Should we rethink higher education after COVID?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me, and most importantly, thank you for what Tecnológico de Monterrey has done and continues to do to really innovate in higher education. As you know, I've been in one way or another connected with the Tecnológico and always admired the capacity of this institution to innovate and to challenge the status quo. So I can't think of a better institution to lead this conversation. And so to your question, absolutely. I mean, the COVID has been obviously nobody would have liked to have such a nightmare that we just went through. But there are some silver linings, and I think one of them is that COVID has already accelerated a new wave of innovation in higher education. I mean, think about it. Many of our institutions were forced to shifting the entire education portfolio online. In our case, within the span of 2 weeks. If anyone had asked me what it would take for Georgia Tech to shift all of our classes online, I would have said, well, maybe give me 5 years and a few $1 million to plan and prepare. And instead, it's like, how about you have 2 weeks? Go do it. And it's not just some classes, is the entire portfolio. We did it. And all those discussions about remote and this and that, all of a sudden it fell by the wayside, and we had to do it. So the acceleration of innovation that this moment has created in higher education is just simply unbelievable and profound. But some of it in unexpected ways, isn't it? I mean, for example, many faculty members who had not done any remote teaching have now discovered how much you can do using technology. But we've also discovered how much you do in a physical setting that we miss when we use technology. But it's making us, I think, more aware of what the physical classroom is good for and what technology is good for. And I think what we're going to see, we're already seeing that, is a new wave of combinations of physical spaces and technology and new forms of education that also allow us to reach further. There are many other surprises that we've had. For example, we remember in the first wave of the internet, and we thought that technology was going to democratize access to education. That was the big promise of the internet. And it turns out that in many institutions like Georgia Tech, when we had to send students home, it turns out that all of a sudden students had very, very unequal settings to access education. And whereas when students are on our campus, on our very old-fashioned traditional campuses, everybody has access to the very same resources and the same technology. When students go home, things are very different. If you come from a middle class or a high middle class family and you have your own space and your broadband connection to access internet versus students who may have in high density households without appropriate access to the internet. So we've learned a lot, not just about how to use technology, but how to use our campuses, and also some of the sort of the underlying inequalities that we were not fully assessing or addressing before COVID.
Thank you, Angel. Yes, the digital divide has been there for all this time, and we have somehow neglected that digital divide. That is not only the access of internet, but it's the quality of the access that you have to internet. No, not only the wideband, but the equipment and the conditions in and around your house.
Yeah.
Then with all these changes, do you foresee, for instance, that Georgia Tech will be the same after the pandemic? I'm talking about, for instance, regarding delivery modes of courses. No, if we talk simplifying, we talk about face-to-face, online, hybrid. How similar that mix of modalities will be to what Georgia Tech was around before the start of the pandemic in January 2020, for instance?
Yeah, that's a great. I think there's no doubt there's going to be a before and after COVID, right? This is like a BC before COVID and after COVID. These are two different worlds in higher education. Well, one of the things we're learning, I mean, after the experience we've had in the last 18 months, if you ask a student to go into a classroom just to be lectured at, that many are not going to just have the patience or the interest to show to just do a classroom, right? And in fact, we've seen that in some aspects, technology is superior to the so-called real thing, right? I mean, if I put a lecture online, if you are tired, you can pause me, or you can rewind me, you can go to the bathroom, get yourself a cup of coffee, whatever you need to do, things you cannot do in a physical space. So we're now learning to combine those technologies. We have a faculty member, the dean of our College of Computing, Charles Isbell, and a colleague, Dave Rainer, that teaches in the college with them. They have published a book called The Distributed Classroom. And that's when they begin to address these learnings from COVID, and when they propose is a mode in which we can just look at the sort of the portfolio of technologies that are available to us, including the physical classroom as a technology itself. And instead of just having this old dichotomy before COVID between remote versus in class and which one is better, I think what we're now entering is an era where we're just going to see the whole portfolio of technologies at our disposal, and we're going to combine them in a way that maximizes whatever it is that we're trying to accomplish. In some cases, it will be maximizing access. I mean, we're no longer used to be, well, your classes Tuesdays and Thursdays at 9:30, and if you cannot be there, you've missed the class. That's no longer the case. The expectations of the students have changed dramatically. So we can now picture classes where some students are taking the class physically, some people are taking the class remotely, some people are moving between formats, and there are many ways. I mean, I think a good metaphor is almost like what Peloton is doing in the world of physical exercise at home, right? You could be in a studio with a gym professor taking a class physically. You can be doing it remotely at home. You can tape it and do it later. That there are ways in which you can still create social connectivity between them. So again, there are new formats that are emerging. We were fortunate at Georgia Tech because of the experience we've had with the online master's programs. And we use that experience to create a remote teaching academy for faculty to help them give the tools. But again, this was a year of just doing whatever it took to go through the pandemic. I think now we're entering a phase of innovation and just trying new things that can hopefully get us in a much better place.
Yes, as you say, this was an emergency response, no, for the pandemic. It was not planned and done systemically, so that we engage all the right
pieces, methods, and actors for this. But it has allowed us to test things. And for instance, regarding just what you say on hybrid modes that are flexible, that let you attend or not the classroom, we have seen that the students that register in a hybrid mode course, sometimes they say that they do that because they want to go to the campus and be physically on the campus, but later they don't show up in the courses and they decide to take them at a distance. And there's a lot of reflection around that because as you know, Tec de Monterrey educational model is very interactive, and so that it's hard for the faculty member to plan something that is face-to-face and then do that at a distance or engage the students at the same time. So it has been a challenging, and I think there are a lot of things that we have to learn to understand better the value of face-to-face so that the students wake up, take a bath, and go to the classroom to be there at 8 or 7:30 instead of taking the course on his pajamas or her pajamas.
Yeah, but that's a very good point. I in fact, what I believe is that a lot of the innovation that we're going to see in the post-COVID world is going to be innovation on how to use the classroom. It's not just innovation on how to use technology. It's innovation on how to use the classroom. It's forcing us. If you're going to bring me at 9:30 to a physical space with all the logistics, and I'm going to have to use public transportation or whatever. I mean, there's a lot of effort involved for someone to actually go to that physical space. It better be worth my while. And it's going to force us to rethink what even physical spaces are used, how they're used.
Yes. It's an interesting reflection. It's the first time that I heard that. I think you're right. It's something that we have to think about, how to engage the students in the classroom and in the campus, no? How we make going to the campus in general, not only the classroom experience, something that is memorable or interesting. And I think that we all agree in higher education that we have to not go back to what we have, but go to something that is better and change. And I would like to ask you, from your leadership position, what are the challenges that you see to achieve that dream of going to something that is better? What do you think it is?
Well, we have we're a highly regulated industry, right? In every country, we have systems of regulations that have evolved for another era, and some of those regulations just don't apply. I mean, just think about accreditation. And in fact, I know that Tec de Monterrey voluntarily goes through accreditation in the U.S. as well. Well, accreditation rules use things like credit hour, and credit hour is number of hours that you are sitting in a classroom with a faculty member. That's what underlies the whole process of accreditation, and many regulations in the United States at the federal level are based on that model. I mean, that's just one example of if you will, of barrier. We used to have a bigger barrier more in terms of our own culture, the academic culture of the university. I think COVID has changed that quite a bit. I think even folks who used to be more skeptical about the use of technology now, with this very hands-on experience, I think that they may have changed that attitude. But the overall structure of courses and accreditation and certifications, and I mean, that continues to be to be a barrier for some of this. I know most of the organizations know this, and they're working in sort of creating more flexible, if you will, structures. But that's going to continue to be a constraint. But I think all in all, those are things that can be sorted out. I think that the cultural shift in the university is much harder, and I think that's why I'm very optimistic about this post-COVID world. I'll tell you, in the case of Georgia Tech, about 6 years ago, when we started the masters of the online masters in computer science, it was a huge shift. By the way, at the time, I was not president. I was, but as an alum, I served on the advisory board. So I was somewhat seeing it from the outside. But the biggest, so in these programs, by the way, the online masters in computer science is now the largest program of its kind anywhere in the world. And together with the computer science, data analytics, and cybersecurity, we have over 16,000 students doing their masters at Georgia Tech. At the time, the biggest obstacle was the culture. Lots of questions raised about, are these programs going to somehow damage the reputation of Georgia Tech? Is the quality of the learning, the standards are going to be sort of watered down? How can you give a degree to someone who has not experienced kind of the traditions and the physical space on our campus? Is it cannibalize our traditional programs and they're going to disappear? And there were lots of fears and lots of beliefs that were very, very strong. And instead, what we have had is a huge success. I mean, we were able to lower the cost of the tuition is a fraction of what the traditional program is. It has not damaged the traditional program that continues to thrive, but it has opened it up to a whole bunch of learners who otherwise wouldn't have been able to come. So, but it was that cultural piece that was the biggest barrier, and that was the reason why Georgia Tech finally succeeded.
Thank you. So it will be those challenges can be summarized in normativity, or those accreditors that in other countries, like in Latin America, the Minister or Secretary of Education has also a lot of regulations that we have to follow. And I agree with you that sometimes those regulations make universities to be more uniform. They cannot differ between themselves. They cannot innovate, because they have to follow very strict rules, no? Sometimes. And the second one is this culture, I will say also awareness and acceptance of breaking paradigms, no? Of online learning, that is very important. I also believe that the crisis, the pandemic, has also shifted the minds of students in awareness in the use of distance education. I've seen some statistics of students that around 30% of them, they would love to continue learning online. So we weren't able to see them or hear them, or they just realized that it's good for them, no? Because they can learn at a distance, particularly for older students that work or have family issues, no? But very interesting answer, Angel.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, those statistics are very interesting, and I suspect that even it's not just going to be some students prefer A, some students prefer B, but the very same student will change because of personal circumstances. Exactly. I mean, you may go to a campus, and there are functions that are physical campuses, the roles that they play, that will be very, very hard to do in an online setting. Many of our students, they're 18 when they move in to a dorm. This is the first time they live away from home. There is a process of personal maturity, of for the first time trying to determine your own life, of growing up, of making friends, of making decisions, there's a whole set of intangibles that are hugely important. But if one student maybe moving in at age 18, and then all of a sudden on their second year, they are going to study abroad, but they're still now engaging using online tools to complete some requirements back at home. And maybe the third year they do a co-op, and they will go work for a company, and they continue to engage in class in a different ways. And maybe on the fourth year they return full time to campus. So the circumstances really will change. And after you graduate, and all of a sudden you have a family, you have a job. So what's exciting is that technology just increases all the degrees of freedom just tremendously.
Yeah, so it means give more flexibility to our program so that we can match the fluidity of the needs of the students during their life. No?
That's exactly right.
As you know, we launched the Institute for the Future of Education right in the middle of the pandemic, and it has been a very rewarding experience. but also very challenging. I know that you also have launched GT Atrium recently. Can you tell us what it is and what are the challenges you faced?
Yeah, well, so we have a center. It's called, actually we may need to change the name because it was the Center for 21st Century Universities. Maybe now it should be Center for 22nd Century Universities. So I don't know, but it's maybe a little bit similar to what you're doing at Tec de Monterrey, which is so Georgia Tech is a very highly it's a research intense university. We're one of the most research intense universities in the country. We bring in about a $1.2 billion a year in research grants, spanning any kind of discipline in engineering and sciences and other fields that you can imagine. And yet, I think the self-critical assessment was, oh my gosh, we're contributing to revolutionizing technologies and science and industries all over the place. How about our own activities, right? So we created the Center for 21st Century Universities precisely to try to apply our very capacity of developing new technologies and new models and innovating to our own activity as a university. And there's a whole bunch of innovations that have come out of this effort, including, of course, the online masters that I just mentioned, including other tools, including some of the early applications of artificial intelligence to tracking the learning of students. One of the, but not all the innovations are technology based. I mean, one of the innovations, the one you alluded to, the Atrium, is one of our attempts to start innovating with physical spaces. So instead of saying, "Oh, Georgia Tech is going to open a campus in let's say in the Silicon Valley," we have thousands of alumni who work in Northern California in the high tech industry, as you can imagine. But and we have hundreds of students who are engaged in the online program who are working for companies in the tech industry in California. Do we need a campus? Well, our answer is probably a campus is not what we need, but let's figure out a space that complements that experience, a space that can lead to, think about like a WeWork, but instead of a WeWork would be a WeLearn, a collaborative learning space where you can come in at different points during the program and meet up with colleagues and have a sense of community that complements your online experience. So we're rethinking what that space is. And it's definitely not going to be a traditional campus. We don't need another campus. We have a wonderful campus in Atlanta to play that role. But what we are envisioning is a network of these Georgia Tech atriums in Northern California, in Seattle. In hubs where we have a high concentration of alums and online students to serve the needs of that community in different ways.
Okay, great. And are you envisioning to do that for undergrads or graduates only?
No, it will be open to anybody. I think the most immediate support will be offered to students who are doing their online masters, right? But because of the locations where we have lots of online students correspond to the locations where we have lots of alumni, it is entirely possible that we're going to have undergraduate students who are doing their internship with Google or Facebook and who are still using this as the place where they go to continue their education. So it's going to be all of the above, although the initial driver is going to be the online masters.
We're very interesting move. So that will be also part of how to take advantage of the physical spaces that you were talking about just a few minutes ago.
That's right. But to design the space from the ground up in a way that supports these new forms of learning. That's the idea.
Great. I also read about the interest that Georgia Tech has in student engagement, and I understand that you develop a tool that helps the faculty member to almost measure in real time the student progress to take actions around that. Can you tell us a little bit more about
that? Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the issues that you have with remote teaching is that it's a lot harder to capture the level of engagement of the student. when you're meeting on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and it's not always possible, because sometimes if it's a large one of those large lecture halls, this may not be possible. But with smaller cohorts, the instructor has a better sense of who's engaging and who's not. There was a very interesting article recently in one of the higher education newspapers in the US that talked about a faculty member that uses humor, which is, even if we're not aware of, sometimes humor is a great way to check whether people are engaged or not. Are they responding? Are they reacting? Are they engaged? Right. So whether intentionally or not, we use lots of mechanisms in the traditional setting to test whether students are engaged. When you are teaching remotely, many of those mechanisms fail miserably. You don't know what people are doing. Some of them may even turn off their cameras, or even if you're doing synchronous teaching, many of those signals fail. And in the traditional teaching, you use mostly low frequency, high stakes feedback, right? So you give tests, and you give tests with low frequency, and the stakes are high because the students are being examined, their grades depends on it. We're moving from low to high frequency, low stakes. We've created just a simple tool that is available in our LMS, which is KPI, Key Performance Indicator, that allows the faculty to do that. It's just very few items that you can ask, that the student can respond to every single day. It's very easily available and it gives a dashboard to the faculty member to complement what's missing in the remote teaching. And that's an area, by the way, that I think is ripe for great innovation. I think that's an area where we're going to see the use and the leveraging of artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms, right? Is to detect student engagement, to anticipate issues of students who may be about to drop out, or students that are somehow falling through the cracks. There's something about the physical, in a way, there's something about the physical space, the traditional classroom, that we didn't anticipate was crucial about the physical classroom. And it is that sense of engagement and discipline. You have to show up. You cannot drift off. There's a sense of response that is expected of you. So we're learning unexpected weaknesses, if you will, of remote that we are trying to compensate for.
Yeah, I've also heard that many faculty members complain that not having the students in the classroom is difficult because they lost all the information that visual corporal language, the language of your body
language, yeah,
they give you, and I think that we have to compensate that when you're teaching synchronously online, and what you're doing with that KPI tool is interesting. We also have people here in the university that are studying how can we evaluate or assess emotions of students through visual tools, no recognition of the faces. Yeah. And they have found that there's also a right amount of stress for learning. So when you're learning, it's good to struggle a little bit, not much. It's right. Not good not to be there, and it has to be like waves. No, there's a certain like a cycle that you have to follow to be there. And apparently, it seems that it's feasible to measure that and to give you a dashboard also of how your students are in that moment in terms of that cycle.
No? Yeah, fascinating. And that's stuff that we cannot do in a classroom, because you're not gathering data of faces. I mean, just the amount of data that we can collect using these tools is just amazing.
It's something that you can do better remotely than face-to-face.
Yeah.
I'm going to change a little bit here the subject, and I know that recently you had a University Global Coalition virtual gathering, and you're very engaged in that University Global Coalition. I know that during the pandemic, universities have realized that collaboration is more important than ever, that they have to cooperate. Can you tell us what is the University Global Coalition?
Well, the University Global Coalition was co-founded with the involvement of Tec de Monterrey, by the way. So your institution was a key element in the creation, and it's a partnership of universities that are committed to the Sustainable Development Goals. And honestly, yeah, I think if there was any doubt before COVID that our destiny as humankind is fully connected, that the problems that affect us all, that you cannot separate these grand challenges that we're facing as humanity, don't stop at any physical, any political borders, if you will. If there was any doubt, those doubts have been dispelled entirely. Climate change affects all of us. If one country is producing carbon emissions, we all suffer the consequences, and the pandemic has been another great example. In fact, I think a big shift or a big positive impact that COVID has had, at least in places like Georgia Tech, is it's made us even more keenly aware of the importance of what we do, both on the education side and the research side. That how when things get really scary, science, technology is all we have. Some people, I think it's important to realize that the ability that we had as humanity to develop a vaccine that is safe, that is very, very effective within just months of discovering a new virus. This is unbelievable. It wouldn't have happened if it weren't for decades of research in places like Georgia Tech. But to your point, we all know that there are a number of big challenges that affect all of us, and they have to do with climate change and the damage to our environment, but it has to do also with economic opportunity and equality, and it has to do with biodiversity. It has to do with gender issues and social issues. And those challenges have been captured very nicely by the Sustainable Development Goals that have been approved by most of our countries. And our realization was, like, if we are to meet those ambitious goals, it is essential that universities engage, because A, we have the science and the technology, and B, is we're responsible for educating that new generation of leaders who are going to make a difference. And that's what the UGC is doing, is to collaborate, to exchange knowledge, to encourage one another, to figure out how can we do a better job of educating that new generation of leaders who are hopefully going to bring about new solutions to the big challenges that we all face. And there's a lot of good stuff that is being exchanged, including, by the way, some of the work that Tec de Monterrey is doing in creating these distributed classes with students from other countries that are really where you're not just learning about the Sustainable Development Goals in the context of just where you live, but that you're engaging with learners from other places. In a couple of weeks, we're going to have some colleagues from Tec de Monterrey come to Georgia Tech to present that work, because we're very, very interested in how we can utilize and learn from you and utilize some of those experiences here. So that's how the University Global Coalition works. And is we exchange best practices, we find partnerships, we collaborate, we encourage one another.
That's a nice sort of finishing our conversation, because we are looking at how educational innovation can help also for us to develop those sustainable development objectives in our students and faculty. I would like to ask you just a last question. Can you tell us what does the future hold for Georgia Tech? What are the plans that you have? What are you working on?
Well, we are fortunate to be to be an institution that has the resources, the history, the reputation. We attract unbelievable students. We bring in some of the best faculty in the world. We have resources. With all of those resources come a huge responsibility. And just right after I returned to Georgia Tech 2 years ago, we went through a process of soul searching, and we call it strategic planning, but it was a lot more of soul searching. We had thousands, literally thousands of people, students, faculty, staff, CEOs, leaders, donors, foundations, institutions from our environment come together and to respond to that question, what is it that we need to do? And the most important thing that came out of that soul searching process was our mission statement. It says we develop leaders who advance technology and improve the human condition. And that really is the whole strategic plan connects to that statement. We develop leaders, right? We're not just about developing and training technicians and engineers and whatnot. We develop leaders who can drive change. We believe in technology. It's in our name. We're Georgia Institute of Technology, just like Tec de Monterrey. We're not shy about that. But we don't believe in technology just for technology's sake. We believe in technology as a tool to make a positive difference in the world we live in. And so if you're going to improve the human condition, it begs the question of what aspects of the human condition need to be improved. And that requires that we, as an institution, become equally strong in science and engineering as we do in social sciences. And we need to have philosophers and historians and psychologists at the table and really create an ecosystem where we can bring people together from different disciplines to achieve those things. So that is our commitment. We're committed to amplifying impact. We're growing. We're right now one of the fastest growing universities in the U.S. because we believe that that's what we need to do. Some universities pride themselves of being small. We actually now we pride ourselves of touching more lives. The more people we can empower to do great things, the better we are. So we're going to grow our research. We're going to grow the number of students that we serve, and we're going to leverage technology and innovation to be able to do a better job of that. And we, very importantly, we're very committed at expanding access. We need to make sure that careers in science and technology are not limited. Right now, we still don't have sufficient women who choose careers in technology fields. We don't have, even in the United States, Hispanic children, Black children don't tend to choose careers in technology at the same rate as others. So because we're large, we feel that responsibility of how do we expand access and open the doors of technology to more people of more backgrounds. So we don't lack ambition, challenges, and ideas for the future.
You have a big ambition and a good one, and I'm sure that you will be successful, taking into account all the score of your past achievements. I wish you success. Thank you, Ángel, for your time and for sharing with our audience your thoughts on the future of higher education, and also for sharing Georgia Tech's work and knowledge on higher ed. This talk has been very interesting and enjoyable, and it will surely be of great value to our audience. We look forward to discussing education and Georgia Tech's projects with you again in a future meeting. Have a great day, Ángel.
For more information, visit observatory.tech.mx/EduTrends podcast and ife.tech.mx. A special thanks to Tecnológico de Monterrey, the Institute for the Future of Education, and the Tec Sounds team. Tec Sounds producer Miguel Mejia, EduTrends producers Esteban Venegas and Cristian Guijosa, post-production Alejandro Sanchez. Stay tuned and play Tec Sounds in your favorite podcast app for other great shows and content.